that answers a lot of questions many people have. The second question, Christine, I have for you is, be working in the immigration industry for quite a few years, and a lot of clients from all over the world. And you mentioned that your firm has your firm basically speak 80 languages, which is amazing. I can't imagine. I don't even know I know 80 people speaking different languages. So based on your experience, what do you think are the most kind of popular pathways or programs for international students to apply for permanent residence? Because there's a lot of programs, but when I applied to my permanent residency, I appear to only know one program, which is the professional nominee and master stream or pilot stream. But right now, I feel there's a lot of options, like different programs, different rules. So can you kind of like highly summarize what are the most popular programs for international students?
I would say the most popular program for international students is the Express Entry system, and applying for the Canadian Experience class. So essentially, it's the perfect projection of what I was talking about before of an international student. So you come here, you study in Canada, your postgraduate work permit, you work 1 year in a high position, in a high level position for 1 year on a full-time basis. Once that happens, then you would apply for permanent residency under the Canadian Experience class through the Express Entry system. So a lot of students take advantage of this particular program for a number of reasons. One is it's called Express Entry for a reason. It happens relatively quickly. Students will, the former students will complete their profile once they have their 1 year of work experience. They'll do an English language test and have any of their foreign degrees assessed. They create their profile with their age, their education, their language abilities, their work history, and then they're given a score based on all of these factors. So one of the things that puts a Canadian graduate at an advantage in this particular system is the fact that they get additional points for arguably getting, let's say, a master's degree or a university degree, or even a college degree for that. And then they get additional points for having a Canadian degree. So they'll get an additional 15 points. And a lot of times, you might be the younger sibling and your older brother or sister came to Canada before you and became a permanent resident. Then you can get additional points because you have a sibling here in Canada who's a permanent resident. And this whole system, you create your profile, you get your invitation to apply, you have 60 days to submit your application, and processing times are typically anywhere between 6 to 10 months. So arguably, the individual can become a permanent resident in less than a year. So that's a very beneficial program. And one of the things we've been seeing, one of the benefits that we've been seeing in the last little while, Brian, I know when you and I first started talking, I had said the numbers for the Express Entry were very high. So the scores were typically around 470, and that's where they were trending all of last year up until I would say maybe a month ago or a month and a half ago, where we've seen a steady decline in the numbers. So the score was at 470. Yesterday they just had a pull. They had a draw, and the score is at 437.
Oh, wow.
That was a 40 point drop, or just below 40 points. So it's a good trend, and I think it's in recognition again of COVID and understanding that there's lots of students here in Canada right now. There's lots of people who studied here right now, and during a time like this, you don't want to be telling people Canada's not an option. They want to make it clear that Canada is an option for them to stay. So out of all the madness in the world, I think that was a very positive thing that the government is doing, and I really hope that they continue to bring the scores down and keep them at this more reasonable score set, because most graduates and people who have studied in Canada, their scores are going to average, and they don't have a job offer because, you know, they're on open work permits. So someone on a postgraduate work permit, most people, their scores are going to be at 430, 450. So by bringing the scores down, it's giving a good opportunity for Canadian graduates to apply for permanent residency. So to me, express entry is always when we're assessing at our firm, when we're assessing clients for permanent residency, express entry is our first token.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not an option for whatever reason, maybe English, they're not very strong in their English language, or, you know, the scores aren't going where they need to go, then the provinces throughout Canada also have fantastic permanent resident programs. So you mentioned before, you came through the Ontario, the nominee program, the master's program, that it still exists. Although in Ontario, the program opens and closes, you know, at a blink of an eye. And you're aware of how that works. It's still there. There's also job offer streams that are available, and a lot of the other provinces do similar things, and they reward international students for having studied in Canada. So there's specific routes. So, you know, the Atlantic pilot projects right now, they're fantastic. You know, if you've studied, you live in those provinces, you get permanent residency. BC has a similar one. There's not one province that all the provinces and the territories, if you have studied there, is putting you at an advantage of applying for permanent residency.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I understand. You know, I understand that the express entry is kind of like a new program, not too new right now. But when I first heard about it, I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is getting a permanent residence status within half a year, or even like 3 to 4 months. That's just unheard of. Because when I applied to my status, I waited for 2 years. So,
2 years, yeah.
So that was this is actually very good news for our international students. A lot of people are thinking, okay, I need to get a job, or I need to work for quite a few months or even a year. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do. Like, you know, after you graduate, you can't just, like, you know, lie down and just stay
wait
there. Yeah, you have to you can get a job either way. So
exactly.
So that's great, and it's, you know, we're happy to see that the number has come down very significantly.
Yes, I'm very happy about that. So, and again, the provinces also link themselves to the express entry system as well. So on your particular, the category you came in under, that still exists, and it takes about, you know, 18 to 24 months to get the permanent residency. But there's also, you know, human capital streams through the provinces that's linked to the express entry system. So the provinces are doing both because, again, I mean, the provinces recognize, you know, immigration is important. And who best to immigrate to the provinces than the students that have invested their time and money in living in those provinces. Right. So, you know, it's an incentive for them to stay.
Right. It definitely makes a lot of sense for to have this kind of like encouraging policies from a provincial level. It actually reminds me of a question that we have on the list that a lot of people are asking. And by the way, you have answered a couple extra questions that I have on my list, so that's great. We don't have to go through that again. But I'm just, you know, since we're talking about this right now, Christina, a lot of our students, when they're even thinking about just how to get into a program in Canada, they're not even here yet, but they're trying to get into a academic program. And when they choose their programs, they're always thinking, okay, my end goal is to stay in Canada as a permanent resident, but, you know, I know there's like different encouraging policies from the provincial level. So should I just go to those provinces, you know, only choose programs from those provinces because it will be super hard, super competitive to get a PR status in Ontario or BC. But, you know, in terms of other provinces like Manitoba or Saskatchewan, they may have some more advantaged policies. So we advise them in different ways, you know, trying to, you know, we always ask them to kind of think of yourself first before you make a decision on this, because you always want to make sure you have a long-term plan and not just to get a PR. you have to think about your life going forward. So what would you suggest? You know, for students who are not even here, who are not even starting their academic application process, what kind of suggestions, what kind of recommendations would you give them when they think about PR or immigration?
The options. I'll tell you first off, I mean, the fact that you're giving your clients that sort of recommendation to think about, you know, the long term as opposed to, you know, the immediate get myself into Canada. I mean, your clients are very lucky to have that, because a lot of people that help facilitate people coming to Canada, or students on just the idea out there and the perception is just come to Canada and you'll find a way. But yes, that is an option for sure. But I think what you're identifying is, you know, being strategic from the very beginning will be beneficial for the exact reasons you've identified. Some provinces are obviously more densely populated than others, right? So if you're coming to Ontario, the understanding is Ontario has one of the biggest populations in Canada. Therefore, the level of competition in meeting the quotas for the Ontario PNP is obviously much different than the Atlantic provinces. Or, you know, going to the University of Manitoba versus, you know, the University of Toronto. You know, it's all the considerations, and it's having a discussion. When I start working with my clients, and I know almost all the lawyers that we work with at the firm, when we meet a student, the very first thing we ask them is, okay, what are your long-term goals? You know, from both a immigration perspective, but also from a career perspective, because I know, I mean, university costs a lot of money, especially, you know, or a master's degree or a college degree, especially at the international rates. So it's about, you know, being smart with the decisions that you make, and think, you know, 3 to 4 years ahead of time. So knowing that there's an option for permanent residency, but also looking at the job market, because the reality is a lot of the times, yes, the provinces will support you for permanent residency, but they'd also like to see that you have employment in that province, right? So certain provinces in Canada are geared towards different things. So, you know, it's knowing where, you know, what you're looking for from a career perspective, and also what you're looking for from an immigration perspective. So making those decisions from the very beginning. So looking at them, and I mean, the great thing about Canada is that, you know, in comparison to somewhere like the United States, where you have a lot of private colleges, you know, a lot of, you know, they have different ranking systems, and you have the Ivy League. Canada has a very good educational system, and most of our colleges and universities that are publicly funded have very good reputations. And I mean, even when I went to law school, I met people from all over Canada that went to different universities, and we all ended up in law school together. So it's you know, that's one of the benefits of coming to study in Canada, and then just trying to figure out which provinces work best for you.
Right. Thank you for that. That's I'm pretty sure that's a lot of students want to hear that, because they do get into this kind of dilemma. You know, where should I go? What should I do? And a lot of students are thinking ahead of time, which is great, because you don't want to. You don't want to. It's like getting a job. You don't want to think about getting a job after you graduate, right? So you want to plan ahead. So
exactly.
Great to know for that.